Shalom Aleichem, everyone. We just finished the share, and I realized that I didn't press record onto the Zoom share. So, in honor of everyone who listens online and likes to review the share, I'm doing it especially for you. It's going to be more of a summary than the full experience, but this way at least you have all the ideas, all the knowledge that came out of this week's share. So we're really starting on page 54 in Tzurba in volume 18 on Hilchot Shabbat. This is Hilchot Bishul, part 5. So we're going to go back a little bit to page 54 where we saw last week, which is on stirring a pot. So we saw the Gemara brought any part of cooking, including stirring, will be chayav chatat. So it's considered part of Bishul. The Ran wanted to say this was only until it's machal ben dursai, and afterwards, if you're stirring, it's not considered cooking anymore. But the Kolbo said no, even if it's completely cooked, you're still not allowed to stir this, and there are reasons. The Pri Megadim wanted to say that perhaps stirring can do something that cooking can't. Chafetz Chaim couldn't see it, like what's happening here, and he wrote b'diavad, if it was done, it's okay. You cannot say that the food is aser. The Igrit Moshe says that perhaps there are some pieces that are not cooked completely, and when you stir it, it does get cooked. It looks like from the Sephardic poskim, we seem to be saying that it looks like mechazekim evashel. It looks like you are cooking something, and therefore they want to say that if you put it on a blech or you put it on a hot plate, this is not the regular way of cooking. So therefore, even if you stir it, it would not be a problem. So I'm going to read from the Malachat. The Malachat Bishul Sefer, and he writes, this rabbinic prohibition of stirring only applies when you stir the food while it's directly on top of a fire. Therefore, if your food is on a blech or a hot plate or on a stove without a lit flame, then you're allowed to stir the food because this no longer looks like you are cooking. Okay, so that was on stirring. Now, comes based on this, what about removing soup from a pot? So the Rambam says you're not allowed to remove food because while you're removing it, you're stirring it. So it's aser. The Ravad said this is very, very chumrah. What do you mean? I just want to remove the food. But the Shulchan Aruch takes the position of the Rambam, right? And he writes that if you remove the food from the fire, right? We're not talking about on the fire. On the fire you can't, but if you remove the food from the fire, if it's not completely cooked, you're not allowed to take it out with a spoon because you will be stirring it and it will be considered bishul. You're cooking it. Even if it's off the fire, you can still cook it if you're mixing it around. If it's completely cooked, then you can take it out with a spoon or a ladle. The Ramah writes, no, even if you take it off the fire, you should still not take off the soup with a ladle. You shouldn't use it at all. So Mr. Brewer explains that means the Ramah wants us to pour it out and not use a ladle. But Mr. Brewer writes in the end, the Chachamim say that we're not strict on this because once it's completely cooked, it's really permitted to stir the food. And therefore they are mekel and they are able to remove it with a spoon if it's not on the fire. What happens if it is completely cooked and it's on the fire? What's the din then? So the Mishnah Berurah brings two opinions. So the Beit Yosef would say it's allowed. Eli Rabbah says that it's not allowed. Okay? And the Orchot Shabbat brings down halachot for Ashkenazim, and they are strict, even removing fully cooked from the pot on the fire or on a hot plate. Therefore, the poskim write that one should never remove food with a spoon from the pot on the fire, as this is removing and mixes the food. And even if the food is fully cooked. Some rule that the removing food from a pot standing on a blech, not directly over flame with the spoon, is permitted if it's fully cooked. Okay, so that is the opinion of the Orchot Shabbat. You shouldn't do it, even if it's fully cooked and it's on the fire. If it's off the fire, perhaps maybe. Chacham Ovadia says, even if it's directly on the fire. And the whole reason of staring it is an issue because it looks like it's mevashel, because you're just staring it. But here, when you're just taking it off, no one thinks you're staring it. You're coming to remove it. So therefore, it wouldn't be a problem if you need to leave it there. Someone's going to come later or whatever it is. You have a reason to leave it. It is fine. You can do it that way. To quickly look in the Yalkut Yosef, He reviews the halacha here very nicely, and doesn't need my haskama here, but this is what he says, and it's a nice review. Once a food has been cooked completely and it's left on the fire for Shabbat, it's permissible to pour some of the food out, or even to ladle it, right? Even though this causes the food in the pot to tumble about, it's perfectly right because it's already cooked. One may certainly take advantage of this if one wants the pot to remain on the fire the next meal, or for a guest who's not yet arrived. So you want to remove it, no problem. If it's already cooked, even if it's sitting on the fire. But one may not stir the pot on the fire. You can't do it, since that looks like if it's on an electric warming tray, so then you could stir it, not a problem, because it's not going to look like it's cooked, because it's on something else. If the food is not yet completely cooked, okay, it's not yet completely cooked, it's forbidden to stir it or ladle out of the food, even after removing it from the fire. Even if it's not on the fire directly, even if it's on the blech, it's not completely cooked, you cannot stir it, you cannot ladle out of it, because the fact that you're moving it will make it cooked more. You have to wait for that food to come less than yatz ledabo to be able to take it out from there. The Chut Shani, which is Rav and Karletz, he says that this is only true with a spoon or a ladle, but if you're just trying to poke out a potato or a carrot or a meat with a fork, it wouldn't be an issue. He also said that perhaps this is only an issue if there's a soup that has contents inside, solids. But if it's just liquid, then you mixing it around is not going to really do anything, and it should be okay. And then they say, what about if I have a kugel on the fire, and me cutting a piece of kugel, is that causing it to cook faster? And they say it does not. Okay, that ends the Shir Aleph. And then we moved on to another topic, and the topic was Bishul Achar Afiyah. I have something that's cooked, but I have something that's baked. Is baked and cooked the same concept or not? So what's cooked, what's baked? Definition of cooked is something that uses a liquid to be cooked, and baked or roasted is something that uses dry heat. Liquid heat versus dry heat. So there's Gemara that says that if you roast and then cook your Korban Pesach, you're chayiv makot. And if you cooked and then roasted, you're chayiv makot. So why, if I roasted it first and then cooked it, why would it be chayav makot? And same thing it says, if I have a matzah and I boil it and I eat the matzah, it's not considered me eating matzah. Why is that? If it's the first day, if it was made right the first way, why is it not considered after I do something to it? So perhaps Rashi says that once you cook the matzah, it's no longer considered bread. Right? And the Sefer Yereim says, based on this, that teaches us if you bake after cooking or cook after baking, it is a new action, and that's also even on Shabbat. So therefore, you're not allowed to take your bread and put it into a soup, and therefore you're not allowed to take your liquid foodie, that has some liquid, you're not allowed to put it on the blech. You're not allowed to do it either way, because it's yesh bishul achar bishul. Okay, yesh bishul achar afiyah, yesh afiyah achar bishul. Then we said what? But there's another Gemara. The Gemara says, if I have vegetable, I eat it raw, it's hadama. If I eat it cooked, maybe it should be shahakol. So who says that? Oh, that's Rabbi Yossi, because he said you have a matzah and you cooked it, it's no longer considered a matzah. So must mean that it loses its status. Gemara says no. Truth is, you cook something, it remains what it is. It's really still bar priyadama. Why does Rabbi Yossi say by matzah? It says by matzah because you need to taste the matzah. Korban Pesach, you need to taste the Korban Pesach being roasted. And when you recook it, it's losing that taste. Says the Ravayam that the opinion of the Sefer Yereim, Rav Eliezer Remetz, he is wrong. No such thing as yesh bechol achar, because we see here, even if you cook a vegetable, it retains a vegetable, right? So it's only by matzah where you need to taste it, then that's a different issue. So the Shulchan Aruch brings down the both opinions, and first says there is bishul achar fiyah, there is efiyah achar bishul, and therefore would not be allowed to put bread into a soup, which is a fiyah, baked item, of dry roasted item, into a liquid soup. You're not allowed to do it, even if it's a klisheni, as long as it's hot, because it's kali bishul, the bread. And v'yesh, and it says v'yesh matirin, and there are those who say it is mutter. Okay? Now, the Shulchan Aruch in another source says, wait, before we go to the Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah says you should be makbid. The Ramah says we don't place bread into soup. Okay, we don't do this because we say yesh bishul achar afiyah. right? There is cooking after being baked. In the Yalkut Yosef, outside of the Tzurba for a moment, he says, cooking the baked item in boiling water is not an act of malacha, nor is cooking an item that has been dry roasted or fried. Once a solid food has been rendered edible through baking, dry roasting, or frying, it may then be cooked on Shabbat in any form one wishes. So once it's already done, it's considered already cooked. Okay? That's what we bring down la halacha. But there's another Shulchan Aruch. Now, if you hold, like the first opinion, like the Ramah holds, the first opinion, that you're not allowed to do Bishul Achar Fiyah, there's another Shulchan Aruch says that you're allowed to take something that was cooked and place it next to a fire. But one second, if you hold like the first opinion, you can't do that because you ain't Bishul Achar Fiyah. The Yesh Bishul Achar Fiyah, so you're not allowed to put something that's cooked next to a dry heat. So the Bir Halacha says, I'm not understanding what's going on here. He says, which way are we holding? So Chazon Ish says, maybe there's a difference. Maybe there's a difference in what? Of when you're dry roasting. If you're putting it on the blech, putting it on the hot plate, are you changing the taste? It's only considered roasting, right? If you put something that's cooked onto the blech, you take your cooked chicken, you made yachni, cooked meat, and you're putting it onto the blech to heat up, right? Are you changing the taste of it? No. They only consider dry roasting lahalacha if it's changing the taste. That's why the Shulchan Aruch says you're allowed to put it next to the fire because you're not changing the taste, you're just making it warm. Another way of answering this is Chamabadia says we have to know the klal hadover. Whenever it says in the Shulchan Aruch yesh and yesh, the second yesh is the one the halacha. So it says yesh matirin, that means it's permissible, and therefore by Faras Svaradim we say ein bishul achar fiyah, ein afiyah achar bishul. Once it's cooked, it's a cooked item, and you can do anything you want with it on Shabbat. Okay, because no longer can get cooked. Therefore, you can put bread into soup, and you can put the soup directly onto bread. There is no issue. Chacham ben Tzina Bishul says, you know what, you should be machmer because of the other opinion. It might actually be chayiv chatat. Therefore, don't do it. Or chot Shabbat, like the Ashkenazim, they say you can't do it. You can't put a tea biscuit into a cup of tea. You cannot put croutons that are baked into a soup. You cannot put bread into a soup. All these are an issue. Okay, all these are an issue. For Sfaradim, you would be allowed to do this. For them, it would be an issue. So there's another issue over here, is that we see a lot of Ashkenazim putting in baked croutons into their soup. And if a bread is kale bishul, and there is bishul achar afiyah, then how are you putting it into a soup? The soup is a kli sheni, I would assume so. So the Mishnah Berurah says, no, the ladle is a kli sheni, and you put it into a soup bowl, that's a kli shlishi, and therefore there's no cooking. Right? Like Moshe said, no cooking in the kli shlishi. But there's another Mishnah Berurah that says that the ladle gets the status of the kli rishon. So which one is it? Shemir Shabbat Kilchata wants to say that when it comes to halacha, bishul achar afiyah, Mishnah Berurah was makel and said, you know, bishul achar afiyah. There are those who say it's not. The Ramah said it's a chumrah. Maybe the halacha is like the Shulchan Aruch second opinion, and this whole issue over here is you know, and the ladle is maybe for this case it could be considered a kli sheni, and therefore it would be allowed. The Orchot Shabbat also makes this distinction and allows putting it into a bowl of soup, considering the ladle a kli sheni and that a kli shlishi. Bidi Avad says the Mishnah Berurah, if someone did put bread into a kli rishon, like in everything in Shabbos, as long as there's an authoritative opinion that says it's mutar, the food does not become also you're allowed to eat it on Shabbat. For Sfaradim, how do we view the ladle? So we view the ladle depending on how long you've kept the ladle inside the hot liquid. If you left it in there for a long time, then it gets the status of a kli rishon, right? It becomes the temperature of the soup. Its steam is boiling out, then it becomes a kli rishon. If you just put it in and take it out, it's not going to be considered a kli rishon. It'll be considered a kli sheni. However, Chamabaji says it's better to always consider it a kli rishon. And the person who does that, tavo ela bracha, he'll get a bracha. So according to the Ashkenazim, how do they heat up chicken and stuff that they cooked, fish they cooked? How do they heat it up? So he says it's really not considered a fiyah, the blech, because not enough intense heat, right? It's dry heat, but it's not sufficiently enough to be considered tzli. Therefore, you're allowed to put it on. And also he says they're putting it in a pan and then putting it on the blech, so that makes it permissible as well. When it comes to coffee, so coffee, you take a look at the Turkish coffee that they have, it says roasted. A lot of coffee grounds are considered roasted. So if you hold there's no cooking after being roasted, so then you will be allowed to put the roasted coffee grounds into the first cup and put it right under the urn, and it's Ira Klirishain, it doesn't cook because it's already cooked. It's not considered cooked. But if you do hold Yesh Bishul Acharafia, so then it would be a problem for the Ashkenazim. So therefore put it in a Kli Shlishi and there would be no problem. We did mention last time already that that perhaps it's not roasted well, the company didn't do a good job, or the flavors and additives that they put may not be cooked, and therefore you have a problem with Bishul. Therefore, always to go with the Kli Shlishi. They also bring here about Starbucks Via. This is a micro-ground coffee, something very special, because in Bishul, if we say something is completely cooked, it means it's completely edible. And Chavavaji holds that coffee grounds with little sugar is edible, therefore it's considered edible, and therefore ain't Bishul Achar Bishul. But the micro-ground coffee of the Starbucks may not be considered something that's edible at all. So even though it's completely roasted, it's not considered edible, and therefore on Shabbat you cannot do it straight through the first cup. So therefore, the opinion is, like I always tell my children and everybody, just don't make all these distinctions, which way, what way. You should know it. Lahalacha, you learn halacha, you should know it. But when it comes to practice, the best way out is to always make everything a Kli Shlishi. In this way, you come out of any problems because there is no cooking in a Kli Shlishi. Okay. Here is an interesting. I actually didn't mention this in the first year, but here something special just for you guys. Okay. If someone poured boiling water from a Kli Rishon standing on the fire onto an egg before Shabbat, making it a soft-boiled egg, so it's cooked, right, and it's edible, it is permitted on Shabbat to again pour boiling water from a Kli Rishon on the fire onto the egg. Okay, this is an example of the rule of Ein Bishul Achar Bishul. I was already cooked, I made a soft egg. I can pour more hot water in after Shabbat and make it on Shabbat and make it a hard-boiled egg. Even if the second pouring causes the egg to become harder, it is permissible. It is clearly permitted to insert a raw egg into a glass of water, as Hadiyat Seledizbo. Now you're not allowed to do, even if it's a Kli Sheni, right? Because it's a Kali Bishul, right? Some egg is cooked faster, you can't do that. If the egg has been completely cooked before Shabbat, it is permissible to insert it on Shabbat into a Kli Rishon, once it's been removed from the fire. This is so even if this will harden the egg more, because again, it's not Bishul Achar Bishul. No, it's Achar Bishul, so you're allowed to do that. Okay, moving on to the next section. What about making toast on Shabbat? So you just told me Ein Afia Achar Afia, even according to Ashkenazim, shouldn't be a problem. It's already baked. I'm just putting it on dry heat more. Shouldn't be a problem, right? But Shalom Eshiv, Shalom Eshiv says, but I picked up a Sephardic Sefer once, and they said you can't do it. And I was thinking about it, he says, and possibly because of the Rambam wrote that cooking is anything that makes something hard, soft, hard. So here you have soft bread and you made it hard, it's cooking. The Ben Ish Chai says it's not bishul. But there might be an issue of makeh bepatish, striking with a hammer, which means making the final act of melacha. And maybe that also, making toast or taking hard, making it soft, might make a makeh bepatish, and that might be the problem. So it's not cooking, but it's makeh bepatish. So that's what Rav Pa'alim wants to say. The Chacham Ovadia says, first of all, Rambam's talking about non-food items, making soft or hard. Okay? It's just so by the egg, you can make it soft or hard. It's not considered cooking, right? Then, he says further, makeh bepatish, that's only by non-food items, like the way the Bavli learns. So it's non-food items these things are. And the Bir Lach also says makeh bepatish is never come by food. It's a novel concept. Never heard about this. Not by the poskim. Not an issue. What about making toast for Ashkenazim? So Rav Willig says it maybe depends on how you view baking to cook after baking. If cooking after baking is forbidden because because it makes a new taste, then here when you're making toast, the bread changes its taste. So maybe it'd be also. But if it's because of new halachic status, it's not a new halachic status, it's still baked. So therefore, it would be permitted. Maybe that's the thing. There's a dishu, edition of Mishnah Berurah brings from Shlomo Zalman Auerbach and Rav Nisim Karleitz that it would be permissible to make toast on Shabbat. So turns out making toast is permissible on Shabbat. Okay, you're allowed to make toast on Shabbat by putting it that's here. Other poskim rule that it's permitted, and the malacha of Maghrib does not apply to food items. The Meshach halacha follows the second. Toasting bread is not forbidden as an act of malacha of Bishul either, since it's already baked. Anyone who refrains from toasting bread on Shabbat in deference to the poskim rule that's forbidden receive a special blessing from heaven. Again, if you don't do it, good for you. But get a special bracha. But technically, it's permissible to make toast by putting it onto a blech. So you want to warm up your bread and make it hard and crunchy. That's toasting it, and that would be permissible on Shabbat, even for Ashkenazim. It turns out to be. Okay, the last section. The last section is making the food cook faster. Okay, so there's a din that you're not allowed to make the food cook faster on Shabbat. So how does this apply? That let's say someone on Shabbat wants to check how the Osh Tzurba is doing, how the children's doing. So he picks up the cover, takes, looks, and sees it's not completely cooked. Well, at that point, cannot put the cover back on because it's not cooked. If you put the cover on, you're making it cook faster. Same thing if it's on the blech, right, and it's not cooking, it's not cooked yet, and you want to move it close to the fire, the direct fire underneath the blech. You can't do it because again, you're causing it to get cooked faster. Okay, so here we're just going to look quickly in the Yalkut Yosef, and this will end in page 331 outside the Tzurba. He writes here in Halacha 82, if someone remove the cover from the pot on Shabbat to check whether or not it is well done and discover that it still needs some more cooking, it's forbidden to replace the cover onto the pot. Covering the pot concentrates the heat inside and cooks faster, so you're not allowed to do that. What happens if someone did? Someone did do it, and he put the cover back. So again, if there is a shita that holds that it's permissible, then even though we don't hold the shita, but it's an authoritative opinion, we do hold it. So over here, if the food has already been cooked to the stage of machal ben dursai, to a certain stage where it's edible, I guess rare to a certain degree, if the food had not yet been cooked, even to the stage, it appears that no one may eat this food on Shabbat, because there you're actually doing cooking. Right? If it's already machal ben dursai, then it's already considered cooked according to certain opinions. The Ran and so others that said that it's not considered cooking afterwards, but then that would be a issue. If once the food has been cooked completely, it is permissible to replace the cover on the pot, even if it's addition. The cooking will improve the food's quality. After all, one is permitted to remove from the fire the pot of stew to be completely cooked, and then put it back onto the fire if it fulfills the conditions of Chazara, which we'll see what they are. Okay, last one, if a pot of food that has not yet reached the stage of being completely cooked is sitting on a blech, but not directly over it, it's forbidden to move it on Shabbat to a position where it's hotter and will cook faster. If someone did do this, again, was the food already machal ben dursai or not? That will be the distinction. So that was a quick review of everything that we learned today. And Zat Hashem, next week I won't forget to, God willing, I won't forget to press record. Shavua Tov.